Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United Kingdom. Joining me this evening is Sean, otherwise known as Validation Boy. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing great, Nathan. It's an honor to be on your show, man.
Yeah, thanks very much for being here. If it's good by you, I'll just call you VB because that's nice and short and sweet. Is that cool?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Thanks.
Well, I'm extra pleased to have you here because one of my first questions that I ask guests is, how did you find out the Earth is flat? And with you, you found out considerably before most people. So I might as well ask you exactly the same question to start off with. How did you find out the Earth is flat?
Okay, well, I've told this story a couple times before, but I'm glad to tell it again. There is a couple years back, many years back, I was just looking at YouTube conspiracy stuff. I was looking at conspiracy stuff all over the internet, but YouTube seemed to be, obviously one of the best places because of the video factor, as opposed to reading articles and all that. And I came across a video by a guy named Conspiracy Dudes Fury, and his channel is called CDF now. And at the time, he had a 5-part series explaining flat Earth, and a lot of the material in his 5-part series was influenced by Eric Dubay and by, I think, Math Powerland. He didn't mention math that much in it, but he was mentioned in it. And he also was referencing some of the things that Eric Dubay had referenced. He wasn't just copying Eric Dubay. He was looking at Robotham. He was looking at all these other things, zetetic astronomy, all this stuff, all these factors, all these things that factor into flat Earth, excuse me. And apparently the guy started getting death threats. So he took his flat Earth 5-part series off of YouTube. And I think he struck it from anyone else who had mirrored it as well to make sure it was gone from YouTube. He still believed in flat Earth. He just had been getting in such trouble with his very large subscriber base over producing that video that he decided to take it down. But I watched it about 20 times, It blew my mind, and I went on to a unaffiliated debate forum website and started writing, articles or whatever you want to call it, threads, posts. And I started revealing a lot of flat Earth truth to people on the internet through the written medium, excuse me.
So that was the article. I mean, that was the first time I heard the sort of date that you'd found out about flat Earth was based on, you were kind of arguing with people about the fact that you had produced this information prior to other people, and you dated it and said, look, here's an article I released. But before we get to that, what was the information that was it? Did you say CDF Fury? I haven't heard the name. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe Mark Sargent actually had him as an interview, or somebody did very recently. It could have been, it was either Mark.
What was the information in his video that eventually got taken down and struck by him? What was the information that was contained within that sort of brought you to the conclusion that Earth is in fact flat?
He was talking about distances, visibilities, lack of curvature, the fact that water's flat. He was using some stuff. He was using the moon and eclipses and things like that. A lot of that stuff I don't agree with now because I don't like to use the sky to justify my beliefs in the flat Earth. But it was just basically all the stuff that we still say today, basically.
Well, we've got to that a bit sooner than I expected. So yeah, I mean, okay. So let's get straight into it. You say you don't like to use the sky. Give me a bit more. Why do you say that? Give me a bit more information.
Well, as some of the listeners might remember, yourself and I and P. Mars and that one guy, he who shall not be named, did a show, did P. Mars's show, and we argued with them, and I brought up the point. I used this idea pretty heavily during that argument that we were having with them. And the argument goes like this. I mean, the sky is something that we can't touch. We can't define it. We don't know its parameters. We don't know where it begins, where it really ends. I mean, you could technically say that you step outside and you're in the sky, but I'm talking about the heights, the altitudes that we can't reach, the altitudes that NASA claims they reach. We've never been there. A government agency called NASA claims that they're the only ones that can go there. I don't believe any of the stuff that they put out. The sky is untouchable. It's intangible. the things in the sky have never been touched. No one's ever touched a star or the sun or the moon. These things can be observed, but since we don't know what they're comprised of, we can't use them as factors in a theory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've summed it up quite concisely, and exactly that. When we had the debate with, I will use his name, I just put it in quotes, which is Tim Osman, because it's a character, you know, it's not a person, but there we go. We won't go into that. But when we debated P. Mars and quote unquote Tim Osman, you were pointing out to them that he wanted to bring the argument around to their observations of their movements. And I had a similar conversation with Joshua, who people may or may not know. He's got a relatively small YouTube channel, but he did a great model maybe 2 years ago, 18 months ago, of the stars with a dome. And at the time I was well into the dome. Now I'm definitely not, and maybe we'll come on to that as well. But he had left a comment in the trailer for this show and essentially said, well, we use these things for navigation. And the fact that they are predictable is useful. You know, yes, we can use them for navigation, but it doesn't mean we know what they are. We have to accept the fact that we simply don't know what they are. And that is the point that you're making.
Yeah, definitely. So you were into the dome idea, but you're no longer into the dome idea?
Yeah, I immediately found myself being led down the path that a lot of people have done. And I don't want to offend any Christians. I mean, I watched Infinite Plane Society get timed out in Globebusters because he's antagonizing Christians. And some of the information that he's bringing is going to antagonize Christians. That's just unfortunate. But I found myself falling into the same trap, which is to say that having been brought up with Christianity, lots and lots of people are, you find yourself affirming beliefs through flat earth. And one of those beliefs was a dome. And I very quickly went, no, why am I now in this path? What has led me along this route? And started to look at it. And that's why I wanted to do Mechanics of the Fourth Wall originally. And that was the idea, to expose, you know, the fact that the devil isn't real, the fact that it's just another paradigm. I was describing it as being set in like opposition, the two sides of the coin, with flat earth and Christianity on the one side and devil worship and heliocentrism on the other. And that was wrong. You know, it's only since seeing Infinite Plane describe the entirety of the deception for 2,000 years that you go, I've got it wrong. But those ideas haven't been firmed up till very recently because of that particular individual. But I realized that there was something wrong with the beliefs that I was holding, and many of them were Christian beliefs, one of them being the dome. Again, I have to use Infinite Plane when I say this, but you know, if you're going to say we haven't got any curve to Earth, where'd you get off curving the sky?
That's a good point. Yeah. And when it comes to the Christianity element in flat Earth, it makes things pretty tough, you know, because Christianity, when you're talking to conspiracy theory oriented or conspiracy theorist minded people, a large chunk of them are going to be Christians. My path of conspiracy theory knowledge started at Christianity. You know, I was really into the Bible a long time ago. I had been reading it all the way through, studying it. So I started looking at some of the other religions. I started looking at Mormonism because there was Mormons that kept coming to my house every day and trying to convince me that their Mormon Bible was the real truth, you know, and answered all existential questions and everything, which it did not. And I started doing some more study on the Mormons, and I found that there's a ton of parallels between the Mormon belief system and Islam. In fact, Mormonism is almost a direct ripoff of the Quran in many ways, with the angel that descends, and the angel gives him gifts, and then he has these powers, and he looks at these objects, and then there's these golden tablets. It's all basically Islam, and maybe some other, you know, Freemason stuff mixed in there. And then, I don't know, as I kept going, I started finding out about you know, the monetary system and debt slavery, which of course, then my friend showed me Zeitgeist, and then he showed me Alex Jones. From Alex Jones, I went on to David Icke. I went to Jordan Maxwell. Eventually found on YouTube a channel called True Theory 3, which back in the day, he was pretty awesome until whenever the flat earth stuff started hitting big. he came out really hard against flat Earth, and all the coolness that I thought this guy had just got thrown out the window. He became a blithering idiot, and he's reduced himself to the mentality of a 5-year-old, and just with all of his hatred for flat Earth. And he spent about a year just dissing flat Earth, and it sucked because I really loved the guy before that. He had a documentary called The Bull God of the Bible, and he was explaining Saturnalia and how Saturday and Saturn worship and the biblical Israelite religion of Saturday, and how all that stuff ties in, and how there's a lot of paganism in our Christian religion, and in our other religions it's really just a lot of reformed paganism and stuff. And he was showing etymology of words and how words all trace back to this bull god of the Bible, basically. And like a guy who's been on my channel, Flat Still Earth, he was telling me last night in a private conversation, he's like, I don't even like to say the word God anymore, because it's all about it. He likes to use the word creator now, and he's trying to train himself to say creator. And I'm in agreement with that. I know a lot of people don't like to say that there's a creator, but as far as I'm concerned, logically, there has to be a creator of all this, regardless of if it's a spinning, corkscrewing sphere through Earth, or a corkscrewing sphere traveling through space, or if it's a flat Earth. None of that matters. There has to be a creator. You can't just get everything from nothing. I mean, I don't know. That's a complete ramble. Sorry, man.
I'm going to come back to that one. But something you said about the channel that was revealing some of the etymology of words and things. Do you no longer watch that channel? I mean, I've got another point to make after that. But do you still watch? You said, because saying things like all his coolness was robbed from him when he braced against flat Earth. I'll just make my point now rather than leaving it till after you answer. But would you not recognise that a couple of years for you longer, I'll get a date from you in a second as well, into flat Earth, you must recognise that people are trained to brace against this, that it's programmed into them to rebel or reject the idea out of hand as soon as they hear it, because they've heard it in the media and seen it be ridiculed. Shaq is a good example of this. The cool people won't like you if you talk about flat Earth. You've got to say you're joking about it, like Shaq did. So therefore, a channel to just automatically brace against it, wouldn't you say that now that's kind of fair enough, knowing what you know?
Yeah, it is, but he went really hard against it, and I don't think he's ever conceded any of the stuff he said. He's just full bore hatred. A lot of his good material was already released years ago. He doesn't really have anything new left to say. Sometimes I find myself in that same position. I get worried that I don't have anything new to say, but over time, new ideas keep coming to me, thanks to all the people I listen to on YouTube and all the other reading outside of YouTube that I do. But yeah, I guess it's normal that it's to be expected that the guy did that, but he hasn't really put out anything of any substance in any other areas since then. So
yeah, I mean, immediately the people that spring to mind for me were people like Thomas Sheridan, and he, by virtue of him being on IFA's list of shills against flat Earth. Now, I know he's anti-flat Earth, but I wouldn't call him a flat Earth shill. But he's on IFA's, so he happened to be featured on Globebusters. And I still very much enjoy Thomas Sheridan, even though he's very much anti-flat Earth, because I understand and recognise that he's been programmed to brace against it. He's under the ridiculous notion that it's obvious and observably a globe, when it simply isn't. It's obviously and observably flat. So with people like Thomas Sheridan, I kind of think, nah, I still like his material, and I understand why he takes that attitude. I'll just tune it out. Occasionally I'll, maybe get his back up by dropping a correction in where he's saying something that's, patently false because of his presupposition that he's living on a globe when he isn't. But I mean, Thomas Sheridan aside, a better example for us, because it's a name we know, would be, again, on Globebusters, they had Jem Panda, who was also part of the debate that we had with P. Mars and Tim Osman, in quotes. And he was displaying sort of, really bad behavior by having 100 or whatever it is, I didn't count, but a lot of sock accounts, because he keeps getting banned, because he'll lose his temper. My point being that it's such a massive, massive paradigm shift. It's literally shattering people's world to even say, or to even concede that the Earth is flat. And at the same time, people are stuck in cognitive dissonance, another channel name of that particular individual, because they're having to preface a lot of their statements by declaring the fact that they understand that it's flat to begin with, but then they will talk it away with either maths or double speak or whatever, to be intellectually honest, you're in a lot of cognitive dissonance. And when that's almost broken, or broken in the case of James Panda, he can't, like a lot of people, you said this on your most recent edited video, you can't unsee this stuff. To deny it once you know, but that's exactly what he's doing. He's bracing against it because he doesn't want his world to be broken. He just doesn't want it to be, and that's the result. So we have to kind of have a certain degree of sympathy. Yeah, I'm sure those troll accounts have been complete dicks to a lot of people, and everybody's got that within them. I know I'm a dick. I'm not going to speak for you. Maybe you'll speak for yourself. You've done enough apologizing, so I'm not going to force you to do any more. But that's how people react, and we should hold up Gem Panda as an example of that, rather than saying, look at how childish he is. I'm not knocking Bob, by the way, in saying this. It is true. He is very childish in his behaviour. But by the same token, we have to understand that we're breaking people's world, literally.
Yeah. Well, to answer the question in two parts, back to True Theory. With him, he had pretty much stagnated. And then so he was doing nothing. He would take long breaks, months at a time. And then Flat Earth came out, and then he spent a whole year dedicated to just bashing on Flat Earth. And the stuff that he was saying against Flat Earth was just asinine. It was the base rebuttals, just the stuff that we've smashed to pieces as Flat Earthers. He just kept harping on that stuff. And then with Gem Panda, at this point, and I can't speak for him, he is a very gracious host to me. Even though everyone else out there seems to have such big issues with Gem Panda. Anytime I've ever interacted with him, he has been very, very nice to me. So, it's an odd way to look at things, I guess. But with Gem Panda, I believe at this point, he's in so much cognitive dissonance. There's something inside him where he really believes the Earth is still flat, and he's just bracing just to do it, just to have something to do in public. Because I don't even think he takes himself seriously when he argues against Flat Earth anymore. You can kind of hear it in his voice that he's almost being sarcastic. He's almost patronizing himself with his arguments. He knows his arguments are written down. They're bullet points that he's said 1,000 times. He's scripted them out. He's heard them repeated back to himself 1,000 times. It's nothing new. He knows that there's going to be a debunk, or there's going to be an answer to everything that he says, but he still just kind of goes through the motions and does it, and makes you wonder if he's just doing that so that he can have a reason to exist on YouTube. Because once you hit Flat Earth, you don't really want to talk about Boston bombing or Sandy Hook anymore. You're already past all that, and Flat Earth is such a big umbrella over all these things that once you hit Flat Earth, that's where you're at. And I think a lot of these so-called contrarians, these so-called skeptics, so-called critics, they're just doing it so that they can have a reason to exist on YouTube anymore. I don't think Tim Osmond would exist on YouTube anymore if it wasn't for Flat Earth. I don't think that he wants to talk about 9/11 now that 17 years have passed. I don't believe it. So that's the only reason Tim Osmond even exists on YouTube, is to go against us.
But they are very useful. I mean, you say to have a purpose on YouTube, and I think Gem Panda especially has got an excellent purpose on YouTube. There are many, many things that I've learned from Gem Panda that I did not know. And for that, I'm thankful. I've said this a few times now, that when I came to Flat Earth, it was only Slice Barcane, and I don't want to even give him credit. I'm not going to list off. I've done it before. But, there was a whole list of horrible, horrible trolls. And I would bleed them for their information as they, we batted back and forth trying to debunk each other's arguments. And it was through vitriol and swearing. And that kind of, in a way, trained me to be that way in the comments section. I got worse and worse. I've addressed it recently, as have you. But, when you're dealing with these people, it does kind of descend you into that chaos. I mean, maybe this is my way of changing the subject slightly, because there's a couple of characters, and I'll use that word loosely, like yourself and a 4D4M Adam Dwyer, that have been around longer than other Flat Earthers. And like I've just said, with me, I found myself falling into the abusive, vitriolic, that kind of behavior because of having to deal with the nastiness of the trolls. And I'll just round out my point about Jen Panda. So in the case of Jen Panda, he's not so much like that. I can, you know, I've been banned from Globebusters. I've had to get in touch with Jaren recently and say, can you unban my 1980 account? Because it was banned when Globebusters was on Jarenism, because I was being nasty from the chat. You know, that's just me being a flat earther, being a dick, dealing with trolls all day long. So Jen Panda isn't generally like that, but he will have his frustration that he wants to get his information out there. You know, he wants to show people where they're wrong in his mind. But, you know, it's one of those. So it's hard to not get angry with him and see his behavior as childish, but at the same time, you have to correct that behavior and say, come on. I was saying tisk 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 in the chat on Globebusters to him because I didn't know he had all those accounts. It's amazing. But yeah, I mean, how have you dealt with the trolling?
Well, I mean, what do you mean, the trolling that's happened to me or the trolling that I've done?
Well, I'm kind of leading it back to how you've averted being like Adam Dwyer and come out the other end and gone, I don't like the person I've become. I don't like making up stuff and spewing hate. You know, Adam is doing the same thing. I mean, it's not fair for me to do this really, but to hold him as an example with him not here, but I see him as very similar, or potentially you could have been on that path to just becoming a flat earth troll like Adam, getting banned everywhere. And he wants to talk about flat earth and say, like you, I've been around a while. I know this subject.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me because all of my early flat earth work was done on this completely unaffiliated debate site. And so when it comes to YouTube, by the time I had actually come out with flat earth YouTube videos, I mean, Jaren was well established, Bob was well established, Morgile, Patricia, Mark Sargent, Eric Dubay, Conspiracy Dude, yourself, all these people were Antonio, very well established, and David Weiss. And I was a newcomer at the time, and I was sitting there claiming, hey guys, I go back way before you guys, you know. Really, I just kind of wanted to get my name out there. I wanted to be known as one of the pioneers on the internet of proselytizing flat earth. And I actually got some support from David Weiss in the early part of my YouTube career, and then I got some support from Bob of Globebusters. I had kind of talked some trash, and he said, let's talk this out. We got in contact privately. We had some great conversations. We ended up being very friendly with each other. And then he invited me on his show. I got extra paranoid one night listening back. I started having these ideas that I had been slighted. I started coming out with hit pieces, and I started going down that road that I guess A4 is still on. I mean, I can't speak for him. You're right. It's not fair to speak for him, but it seems as though that he's one of those people. And there's others like that. But I mean, once again, it was tough for me because I was seen as a Johnny come lately, you know, after all these people had been established, and I was bitching and moaning saying, oh, you know, I was here first, you know, even though I totally was not here first. You know, Conspiracy Dude had it all before me. He was getting his stuff from Eric, you know, and other sources. So when you look at it, it really does look like Eric Dubay might have been probably the first big name to come out on flat earth on the internet, you know, in the resurgence of flat earth, at least. I know that he has, you know, Bob earlier today was calling out Eric, saying, Eric, come on Globebusters and tell me how we're shills, you know, prove that we're shills and stuff. It's unfortunate that Eric Dubay has to be like that. You know, Jaren made a good point. It's already a huge uphill battle. And now we're having to deal with basically one of the kings of flat earth hating his kingdom, I guess. It's a horrible way to look at things, because I don't want to say that Eric Dubay owns this or anything, but he does. He is an overarching presence for internet flat earth awareness, and it's very sad and unfortunate that he has to take these stances and have such an ego. I mean, you would think that someone who practices yoga and practices all these martial arts and stuff, that he would know better and he would be able to see through these kinds of things. It's slightly disappointing, but at the same time, I'm never gonna bash Eric Dubay, because in reality, if it wasn't for Eric Dubay, I don't think any of us would be talking about the earth being flat.
You know, maybe not. I mean, I attribute my finding out to Matt Powerland, so maybe not for me. But you know, that's different. I mean, I think it's the way I've described it in the past is like they need flat earth out in the mainstream media. And by that, I mean, if you've never heard of the term flat earth, you'd hear it and go, that seems perfectly reasonable, because it is flat. You know, it's obvious. But that being the case, and them telling us it's a globe, they need the idea to be ridiculed. So you've got to have it out in the mainstream media to a certain extent so that it can be ridiculed, so that you are at least slightly conscious of the term, enough to know that you realize that it was Philistines that had that idea a long time ago, and we've evolved beyond that now. All of those words that I just used, very loaded, evolved. And anyway, so that's why it's got to be out there. So you've got a little snowball, this little snowball idea that people will kick as they walk past it, occasionally laugh at it, and that will be it. That will be the idea that is essentially tying down their obvious and observable reality that they're living in daily. So you're kicking around the snowball. Then you have a combination of people. You've got Jaren, Matt Powerland, and Eric DeBay. Then followed up, you've got Mark Sargent, Rob Skeever, Thrive and Survive, Patricia. That snowball has suddenly gained a bit of momentum and started rolling down the hill of its own accord. Not of its own accord, a lot of work, but you know what I mean. And now, 2 years on, I would say, maybe 2.5 years on for most, the people who are in that group, the waves that Jeff Stewart describes. Well, that's turned into a great big boulder that's hurtling down the hill and picking some people up, like Jen Panda, whether they like it or not. Suddenly their reality is being changed, and some people don't want that to be the case. They've come across it on a suggested video from YouTube. Next thing you know, they're completely looking at life in a different way, and that isn't necessarily what people want. They just want to eat popcorn, go to the movies, and see the space propaganda and know that that's their reality, and that's not what people have got at the moment. So to attribute it to just Eric DeBay, probably not. If it was just him, I don't think it would have, he would have just propped up the ridicule. He might have still had 50,000, 90,000, 200,000 subscribers if no one else had done anything, but he'd just be on his own, there to be pointed, poked fun at, and that would be it. Whereas with other people by his side, whether he likes it or not, it lends credibility to his arguments, and that's what's given it its momentum. So I don't want to be disagreeable and say no, it's not because of Eric DeBay, but he has carefully phrased the idea. I think he phrased it something like, "Who brought back the flat Earth?" Well, the Earth was always flat. It always will be flat. It's obvious and observable to anybody who's got eyes. To say that you own the concept is kind of ludicrous, but you can't share that because it's such a difficult concept to pin down if you're going to attribute it to an individual. There's too many people going back in history, like Rowbotham, where a lot of his texts come from. So he has to take ownership of it. He can't give any credit to anybody else if he's going to be put down in the history books as the person that brought back flat Earth. That's why he has to take that stance. However, I still see what he does as quite smart. So in calling Shillfest, he creates a controversy about the event, which makes people want to look into it more. He's also mentioning it. There's no such thing as bad publicity. He might be ridiculing it, but he's still mentioning it. And when it came to people's names on his most recent interview, he didn't specifically name and shame. He just drove people to his website, which again causes controversy, gets people talking about other flat earthers. There's a small, I'm not gonna lie, there's a huge handful of people that like drama. I'm sure you will, attest to this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, with Eric, you could look at it this way. Maybe he was out there by himself for so long and taking so many hits from so many critics and so many skeptics that by the time all these other people came around and started supporting his idea, or not his idea, but the idea that he had been fighting, the battle he had been fighting on his own for all that time. Once all these people started coming around, his knee-jerk reaction seems to have been, well, all the punishment I took for being a flat earther, I'm going to now dish it out on all these other flat earthers, because flat earthers are the ones hanging around him, listening to him. They're his audience. Even though they're supporting him, he just felt the need to, it's like the bullying thing. You get bullied as a kid, you grow up and you start bullying people,
Right. It's kind of slave turns slave master sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying that is what's happening. I'm saying that could be, why he has gone down that road. As far as all these other people coming around and whether he likes it or not, well, all these other people coming around have introduced so many more new evidences and proofs for the flat earth than he ever did to start with, even though he gave a lot of information to this quote movement, if you want to call it that. Some people don't like to call it that. All the contributions of all the other names, even the small, there's channels with 100 subscribers that have brought huge contributions to the flat Earth. So,
yeah, and it's a journey as well. I mean, I mentioned Joshua earlier, and he was part of my journey, and I will not take any credit away from him. I mean, he's avidly come out against flat Earth recently, and fine, he feels the star trails are an absolute, lock for it being a globe, and he's done a lot of research into the stars. Check out the comment thread. It's a very short one on the trailer for this show if you want to see what we had to say to each other. And he's a nice guy, most people are. That's the thing. Most people can be complete dicks. We've covered that. But on the whole, most people in the arena we're in are very, very amiable people. Very approachable. We've got Patricia Steer in the chat at the moment, and she, gives out her email address constantly, and we'll chat to people and just, shoot the breeze about flat Earth. It's our favourite subject. I'm sure it is yours too. But you generally maybe taken a different stance. You've done enough trolling with flat earthers, so it wouldn't be fair to not come on to this subject. But I mean, maybe if I put it in a positive light, tell me about your turnaround from a more hateful flat earther to a more positive one.
Well, as people know, I started with the hit pieces back almost a year ago, probably. I don't even know. Yeah, it was over a year ago, because it was on April 1st when I first started doing these attacks on my fellow flat Earth proponents. It started like that. I started getting a lot of support. Or in the beginning, I was getting trashed, and I was losing tons of subs, and people were like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" And I just stuck to my guns. I was angry. I had a lot of pride, a lot of ego. I stuck to it. After a while, people started supporting me. John LeBon, Tim Osman, Jed Skeptic, they loved it that I was bashing on you and on Patricia and so forth. They loved it. So they just started supporting me blindly, even though they were not flat earthers. And they knew that I was a flat earther. And I was the worst kind of flat earther. I was a, quote, flat earth dogmatist, and they still supported me just because I was going against you guys on a personal level. They loved it. They just wanted the drama, just like you were saying. After a while, I started getting sick of it and started realizing I'm just producing drama just to please these people. I'm like speculating on things. I'm making up content. I'm making up material just to appease this ridiculous small fan base that I had. Looking for acceptance, I guess. I don't really know. I started realizing this. Jed kind of took a vitriolic turn on me. Tim Osman invaded my live show with Flat Still Earth at one point. And I felt like I just got totally burned. I was playing with fire and I got burned. And I realized, wait a second, these guys that I'm messing with now, these skeptics, they're all assholes. Except John LeBon. I still love John LeBon. Me and him are never going to have any problems with each other. But people like to clump John LeBon in with that with that group of guys, and I don't really think it's fair to clump John LeBon in with the Jed Skeptics and Tim Osmans. I don't think that's fair. But these guys burned me, and I felt like, I wanted to get away from that. I had tried to privately contact you and Patricia, which you guys talked to me. You heard me out. You gave me a chance. When you and me and Patricia first spoke, I was still being my old self, and I regret that even.
Can I tell that story just because it's funny?
Well, you can. Yeah, go ahead.
So you and me are chatting. I'll just phrase it how it comes off the top of my head. So you and me are chatting on Skype, and the subject of Patricia came up in the Skype conversation. Not were we face to face? No, it was just in a chit chat. And then I just started the phone call with you and me and Patricia on it. So literally, as you're saying, there's no way she's going to talk to me. Next thing you know, all three of us are in a conference call on Skype, and there's you, me, and Patricia. And it was funny because you were still talking about Patricia in the third person while she was there. It was bizarre, and I was like, she's right here. That's her. She's not this character. Because you were talking about her in the third person. It was like you were describing Patricia Steer as this character when she's literally down the barrel of the camera lens. It was just so funny.
Yeah, I had conditioned myself to think that way about her. You know, even though she put her email address, I could have easily contacted her at any point during all these hit pieces that I was making. You know, I could have easily, and I just felt like I couldn't or I shouldn't, and I was more comfortable trashing her because that was seen. She had the face that was known. You know, so I was like, I was just attacking the system, I guess, in some weird way, or that's what I was thinking that I was doing. Little did I realize that she's on my side and you're on my side, and with the kindness that you guys showed me, and with the persistence that you showed, hanging out in my live stream chats and giving it right back to me, back and forth, all the combat you and I did, I grew to respect you, man. And it turns out that you guys are on my team this whole time, and there's really no need to fight against fellow flat earth proponents, especially not those who are subcount wise much more prolific, much more successful than myself. Why bother doing that? Why bother just trying to take down bigger channels? I mean,
I'd be in your live stream chat and I'd say, yeah, your music was awful, just to be nasty, not because I actually thought it. And you'd be reading the chat and you go, oh, Nathan Oakley says, loved your album, watched it all. You know, it's just funny.
Yeah. I knew you'd get a kick out of that. I know. I mean, I feel like over time, observing you on live streams and in chats and what you're saying, I felt like I grew to know part of you. You know, part of your personality is very much like my own. So I really feel like I understood you in a better way than other people might.
Well, the thing that I hope I could recognize, or maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I don't think so, is that exactly that empathy. You recognize something in me. That statement is to display empathy. And that's kind of what I wanted to get onto in the next subject, really. It's something that you talk about in some of your videos, which is about the psychopathic elite, the people who control us. And it's 5% of the population in the Western world. You know, there's 1 in 20 people are psychopaths. And some people will label it as narcissists. Some people, you know, will label it as shape-shifting reptilians. You know, but ultimately speaking, there's a certain type of person that uses the reptilian cortex primarily, and they are the people who run us. They are wired in a certain way to, and I'm going to swear, not give a fuck about us and simply trample on us to get where they want to get. And that means that by their nature, they will rise to the top. They are like cream, and we are run by these people. And unfortunately, not only are we run by them, they are rife in most communities. You know, if you've really got to look at the leaders, and you generally find that they are psychopaths. That's the positions that they assume because they get there by trampling on others. And knowing that to be the case, it's for me a huge amount of importance to get that message across to people. Understanding psychopathy is understanding why a lot of the lies are perpetrated in the way that they are perpetrated. You know, we get people like Russian vids talking about Jupiter's delight a lot, and that's very important. You know, people will just assume they have a vague idea what that means, but you have to have a really good idea about psychopathy to understand why people will do that, why the lies come, you know, the needless lies, not only the complex maths and the scientism, or however you want to phrase it, that is used to deceive us, but also the outright lies, the duping delight, the truth in plain sight, the A maps in movies, you know, all this stuff that's used to not just ridicule us, it's also there, as I described earlier, to keep it on a slow simmer, to keep it in our consciousness. But it's still by the person that's put it out there. They are literally laughing in our faces while they do this.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, I do have some narcissistic tendencies, and that's why I feel like I understand the way authority works. And that's why I'm able to recognize the tricks that they are playing through the media. You know, I get it.
Well, I mean, it's a sliding scale. So it's, you know, everybody has a certain amount of empathy and narcissism in their personality. It's not just as cut and dry, as black and white as people are narcissistic or empathic. You know, most normal people will sit somewhere in between and have those tendencies, but they won't necessarily recognize themselves as having those tendencies or recognize those tendencies in others. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a category that's beyond that scale. You know, it's a psychopath in the truest sense of the word. You know, they have no empathy. It is a light that is never been. It's not a light that's been extinguished for a time, like with yourself. You know, there was a period where you were extremely narcissistic, but that does not make you a psychopath. And that was something that was glaringly obvious to me by your behavior. But there are, as I say, other people, and it's true in our community, that very much display this behavior, and it will be ignored, or people will turn a blind eye to it because they don't recognize the significance or the danger that it presents. So, the fact that you will, highlight the narcissistic behavior in the elite and how they control us is something that, it drew me to your material. And, you can tell you're not a nasty person. I can tell.
Thanks. Yeah, same for you, man. You're really not. And like, people out there, they want to characterize Nathan Oakley this way or that because they've seen you in chats fighting the flat earth battle, or they've seen you retaliate against people like Tim Osmond and get really, really nasty with them. But sometimes that's what it takes to get through to those kinds of people that are trolling you. You have to sink down to their level to get them to buzz off, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have to change my attitude recently because I've grown in subscribers, and it's a very slow process gaining subs. It takes a lot of videos, a lot of work. There's ups and downs and all the rest of it, and you don't really notice. But then it reached a point where I was having people say to me, holy crap, look at the state of your comments. And while I stand by every word of them, unless they've been deleted by other people, I don't delete my comments. I use my own name for a reason, though that is my personality, unfortunately. But at least I'm not hiding anything. There aren't any monsters hidden. Whereas with psychopathic individuals, they're wearing masks. 9 times out of 10, they're mirroring your own personality to get you to like them. They're using your traits to make you think that you're like them or they're like you, when in reality, it's just them attributing. It's them assimilating your characteristics to better their own, way of relating to you and all the rest of it. But I want to leave psychopaths a little bit, if that's okay, and come back onto flat Earth, because a lot of the arguments that we were having with Tim Osman and especially Jem Panda were firstly curvature based, which we'll start there, but the second one was sort of reality based. So where do you stand when you're discussing flat Earth in terms of no curvature? How would you that's a very simplistic thing to boil down, but how do you give that a bit more meat?
Well, can we just go back just for a minute before we go into this next area? I want to give the viewers, let's give them something to chew on. Okay, so everyone knows I personally attacked you, your friends, and everything. So as the target of some of those former attacks, how do you feel about me taking down all those videos in the name of integrity? Do you think that I've lost any credibility for taking those videos down, or do you think I've gained credibility for taking those videos down? Because I have admitted publicly that most, if not all, the stuff in those videos that I speculated about you guys couldn't be proven. I never said it's wrong or it's right, but I know that I couldn't prove it. So in the name of integrity, I had to take it down. Do you feel that has any validity?
Yeah, because it's your choice. I mean, that's a personal thing. For me, I take a different attitude, which is to say I would own my mistakes, and where I have made mistakes, I've tried to address them rather than just take the videos down. However, and I hope she doesn't mind me speaking on her behalf, but when I've had a similar conversation with Patricia Steer, her attitude would be absolutely, take them down if they're full of factual inaccuracies and outright lies. Then yeah, you just take them down. But it depends on the individual. I'm not going to tell anybody to take their videos down. I've literally been through court cases over YouTube videos and not taking them down. So I'm the first to say I don't like taking videos down. It's just not what I do. But it's a question of integrity. You summed it up nicely with that one word. Yeah, it's down to you if you felt that was the right thing to do. It's not for me to say it is or isn't. But good for you.
Yeah, I just felt like I should, put that out there and give the listeners, the viewers, a little shocker of a question, something to entertain them, because everyone always wants a little bit of drama. I just thought I'd touch on that area and ask your opinion on that.
I'll throw it back at you. I mean, for the people out there that have literally spouted lies, do you feel that they should take that down?
If they are going to take it down, they need to accompany it with the public recognition of why they're taking it down the way that I did. You know, I didn't just take the videos down and just say nothing. I took the videos down and explained to my viewers why I took them down, you know, and to other people's viewers on your show, on other hangouts that I've been on, you know, Jed's and all this stuff. I've explained why. So I feel like that's the right thing to do. Just taking them down without explaining why it's a little bit silly. I don't want to leave those videos up because even though they're part of the past, someone new to the Flat Earth could come along and see that. And that's silly. I don't want that happening. I don't want people's first impressions of Flat Earth to be the drama and the lies and the personal snickering like that. So I even took down my piece on Jed recently. I even took that down now. So that's where I'm at.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a much happier place when there's not lots of that horribleness going on. But we do live in that world. You know, people who are coming to Flat Earth are coming from an arena where they're watching the Kardashians potentially, and then they might, if we're lucky, switch off their TV sets to remove themselves from that arm of propaganda. But on the whole, I don't think people will stay unless there's a certain amount of drama. It's unfortunate, you know. When it happens to me, you know, Tom Foley of the International Space Stage, I just thank him. You know, thanks for the advert, wonderful. You know, because in the long term, there's no such thing as bad publicity. I have to preface that statement. I used to just say there's no such thing as bad publicity, but then I started looking into it a bit more and researching it a little bit further. I had researched it before making the statement previously, but you know, you think, is that still true? And you go back and look at both sides of the argument and go, no, on the whole, I still think it's absolutely the case. You know, that in the long term, there's no such thing as bad publicity. In the short term, yeah, you can definitely do somebody some damage. But on the whole, you know, people don't remember the blowjob in the White House. They just remember his name.
Yeah. Okay, enough on that, I guess. What was the next thing you were asking me about Flat Earth? And
yeah, well, it's just I love to keep the Flat Earth subject is in the title of the show. So it's, you know, I in the debate with P. Mars would say it's obvious and observable, and then throw back in their faces the fact that they preface their statements with things like flat ball. But I wanted to hear from you where you would explain to somebody that there isn't any curvature when they've got the presupposition that they're on a ball.
Oh, you mean when I'm like telling someone in public cold?
Exactly.
Well, I don't do that so much anymore. I used to work at one restaurant where I was telling, when I first was really getting into Flat Earth, I would, every time I'd hear something new for Flat Earth, I'd run it by them, or I'd put it in front of them and see what they had to say about it. And they'd always come back with some, you know, NASA crap, you know, or some science book crap that we've debunked. And I would move on to the next thing, and I'd say, oh, well, if that's the case, then why doesn't this or why doesn't that? You know, and I'd go down the normal path of trying to change their mind. Recently, I've said it to some people, but I find that the people I've been saying it to have already actually heard about this, and that's
cool.
Yeah, it's a different thing now, and they already have an idea of where I'm going with it. And sometimes they've been programmed, you know, through the media to mock it because of the Jimmy Kimmel that they've seen, or the this, that, and the other show, whichever shows that's out there mocking us. But at least they're hearing about it. I feel like I'm so deep in Flat Earth right now that the real juicy stuff that happens with me debating Flat Earth is against Gem Pandas and against Tim Osmonds and people of the sort. And well, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so when it comes down to that, it gets down to the philosophical argument of what I like to call Flat Earth dogmatism. And I know that term dogmatism has so many bad connotations, but I throw it around a little loosely. But at the same time, I've also, in that last video, defined dogmatism, and I've demonstrated the fact that there's no inherent fallacy in dogmatism. I just like to use the word because it gets under the skin of people like, you know, the trolls, the skeptics. They want to say, oh, you're a dogmatist. Yeah, what's wrong with being a dogmatist? There's nothing wrong with it, you know. And it's just, it's like kind of the same reason I use Validation Boy as my name, because people get it gets under their skin, you know, validation boy. Oh, and then they get sidetracked and they will say, you're just a little boy. You're just a little boy. And it just reveals who they are and what kind of tactics they're going to be using against me as I spread truth to them. So
what are the tactics that you're having used against you then?
I mean, just like that, like people saying, "Oh, you're just a boy, you know, you're not a man," and all this stuff. And why do you use boy in your name? And why are you such a dogmatist? And
so what you're saying is, when it comes to a flat Earth argument, people will immediately pick on traits of your characteristics that you've picked in terms of your name and things like that, rather than debating the arguments. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So same goes for dogmatist.
Wait, say it again. I'm not sure.
So in terms of, I'm trying to imagine the audience is completely cold. So if the audience hasn't got a clue what you mean when you say flat Earth dogmatist, what does that actually mean?
Okay. Well, it's kind of a unintentionally, I've kind of made it like a brand thing, you know. It's kind of like a branded thing. Like Validation Boy is the original flat Earth dogmatist, you know. Me calling it dogmatism in the beginning was just to piss off those people. Then they started using the term against us, which I rebut with there's no inherent fallacy in dogmatism. But what's involved in flat Earth dogmatism, as I like to call it, is the fact that both sides of this debate, like we demonstrated with P. Mars and Tim Osmond, both sides of both sides of this debate agree that what we experience as individuals is a flat plane. There's no, you know, both sides agree to that. And then furthermore, my argument is that you cannot use the sky to describe the ground. The sky is completely detached from the ground. So, and NASA's never been to the moon or the sun or the stars. Okay. They can't prove that they have. None of us are ever going to go to those things. None of us can empirically or with the scientific method explain these objects. We can't do it with the scientific method or empirically. And these two things are different. And those things combined, there's no reason to say that the Earth's not flat once you factor these facts in. So that's what I call flat Earth dogmatism.
So what about the fantasy element then? So you mentioned NASA. What about your take on how they present reality to us?
I mean, NASA's a joke. I mean, watching Learn of the Jesuit Order, watching Max Malone, watching Jaron and the Globebusters, the Morgile, you name it. There's such a long list of people. I can't even, I feel like I'm leaving so many people out. But these people have broken down this footage. They've shown so much. They've taken the time to do this research. They've put these videos into their video production programs on their computers and put it in slow-mo, zoomed in, done all these things to demonstrate how ridiculous NASA and their footage and their concepts truly are.
I mean, was there ever a stage that you came across a real killer of debunking bubbles in pools, or what was it that sort of made you realize that? I mean, for me, it was probably the moon landings, if I'm honest, but what was it for you?
I think it was the moon landings. I think it was even the mainstream TV shows like on Discovery Channel that were showing how the moon landing could have been a hoax. I think those even did it for me. You know, I don't know why
the things that showed the flag waving in no atmosphere on Discovery Channel. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like Discovery Channel, all the class. These are mainstream channels, you know, Discovery Channel, History Channel, and they're airing these documentaries showing how there's no dust footprint of the lunar lander. There's no the flag, like all these things. How do you project a rocket in a non-atmosphere? You know, these kinds of things. I was surprised, but that they put that stuff out on TV. But like you said, it might just be one of those things that they put out there so that to keep it on a slow simmer, so that people know what they're supposed to be ridiculing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is the case with most things. But with the moon landing, it's a different kettle of fish because it's so terrible. I mean, when you look back at the footage from the moon landings, I didn't think we'd get into this, but why not? It just looks absolutely terrible. And it's hard to think back to a time when you saw that footage and had the cognitive dissonance all working nicely and seeing it. And you think, well, it's because you didn't. You only ever got flashes of it. You know, they only ever put it up for a few seconds. And the people who actually got to see it broadcast were watching it on a 17-inch square CRT TV. And the original footage was, let me get this right, it was fed to them apparently live from the moon, and then that was being displayed onto a monitor. That monitor was then filmed with a camera, NASA camera, and projected onto a screen so that it was 8 foot across. And that screen was then filmed by the TV studios, and they then broadcast that out to the world. So it was a third generation image. So by the time it's reached the people's eyes, it's a fourth generation image of a pre-recorded film filmed on a set, but to hide the absolutely appalling fakery. And, that's all obviously long gone and lost now. Well, the first one, that's something that I don't want to get corrected on in the comments. So, the first lot of footage is all gone.
How convenient.
How handy. Same as the telemetry data. The one thing that proves the greatest achievement of mankind's history. Oh yeah, well, tape was very expensive. We used it again. Oh right. How much is your budget? Can't afford film. What?
Exactly. Well, one of the key things that did stand out for me also was on one of the Chinese spacewalks. The guy has a big mirror on his wrist, and you see the flash, and then you see the stadium lighting, and then the person who presented that information also showed a photograph of the stadium lighting rig that they were probably using, and they looked almost identical. And and then you see bubbles going up at the same time while this guy has stage lighting and is reflecting in his wrist mirror, and it's from China, and they're doing it in 2014 or 15, whatever it was. And it's like, come on, man, China, you're only just now getting around to doing this. Doesn't make any sense. And then they're faking it too. And then people say, the classic argument of why would Russia and America, be faking? Well, what it was is that America faked it to look better than Russia, and then Russia faked it too to catch up to them. And now China's faking it to make themselves look like they're so omnipotent that they can do these things too. And that's all it is. They know that the public will believe that they're going to space. So if they give their own country, if they give their own populations this idea that they're so powerful, it's just more means of enslavement, mental enslavement.
Or one world religion. This is another idea I've got for Infinite Plane. I'm giving him a lot of props at the moment because I'm watching a lot of his stuff because I think he's right on. But he's essentially saying that heliocentricity, whatever the word is it heliocentrism or heliocentricity?
Yeah. Well, heliocentricity would be you'd use that to describe an action, but heliocentricism is the right word.
Heliocentrism. See if I could wrap my tongue around it. Is the new religion. Essentially, it's the one world religion. We all have an icon. Our idol is the globe. It's a non-thing. Space doesn't exist. So we've been given a cosmology by the elites, and Cathexis describes it as mathematically prescribed sun worship. But it's essentially the new one world religion. So it makes sense that you're going to have China having space programs. They've got to get the same lie going, but the lie is a psychopathic lie, and it's therefore part of a psychopathic system, and therefore it's going to collapse within itself. It's set for self-destruction. That's how it is, unfortunately. So it seems like it's on its way out. Would you agree?
Maybe. I mean, it's kind of like doublespeak. It's this cognitive dissonance that people have. I mean, this whole corkscrew, heliocentric model corkscrewing through space. Okay, it's quite obvious to anyone with half a brain that if we really are corkscrewing through space, none of the stars that we see should ever be lining up. The North Star, Polaris, should never be in the same place. We should have been long past that star by now. We should have been in a completely different place. But people in one side of their mind are thinking, oh yeah, we're just floating through space on this corkscrew, and on the other side, everything's always lining up perfectly, which is why there's the ancient ruins that line up with the stars, and that's why we have our world religions and all this stuff. That's a major cognitive dissonance that most people in this world don't even realize that they're suffering under. And I'm talking about globers, normies and stuff.
Yeah, it's a completely different worldview to think of yourself on a static plane, because you've got this concept that's been programmed into you from birth. So to think of yourself in space, having space underneath you. I was thinking about this just today. So it's all well and good. We have a lot of focus on the sky. We've talked about, you know, the fact that you will not take anything in the sky as proof, but blows your mind if you flip that over and go, think about how far down we've dug. This gets touched on a lot. So the fact that we've only dug down, what is it, 8 miles, 12K, you know, it's a very, very small amount that we've dug down. That blows my mind. You know, it's as fascinating as the infinite nature of space. You know, what's below us? You know, what's down there? You know, does it go on forever? You've got as many unknowns about what's below our feet than what's above our heads. You know, at least we can see what's above our heads. We can, you know, we track them and use them for navigation, as Joshua points out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is mind blowing. I mean, like, so there's parts of the ocean that are deeper than what they say they've dug on land, correct?
I did not know that. Is it the Mariana Trench? Is that deeper?
I really don't know. I wish I had that statistic right handy with me, but I don't know. I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, I bet it's not. I bet it's not that many miles down. It can't be.
It's one of those things they throw around that they know more about space than they do about the deep ocean. You think, yeah, right. They know more about it because it's their construct. You know, they've invented it. So yeah, they know everything they need to know, and they'll change any detail as they go along and be very pleased with themselves when they do.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. That's a great point. As far as digging underneath us, that's really a scary prospect. I mean, we're talking about the foundations of what I believe is a flat plane. I'm not going to say that it's infinite. I don't know that. I can only see locally. You know, I can see as far as maybe a telescope would allow me to see across the flat surface. So I can't say that I know that it's infinite or that there's this Antarctica that's in a ring or anything like that. I really don't know. That's something I've been struggling with lately personally. All I do know for a fact is that relative to me, the ground looks flat and the sky is something that is essentially, and I wish I could find a better word to describe it, but essentially intangible.
Yeah, we can't touch it. We can't go there. And we're lied to, which is the thing that's the most unnerving, that they have. We know why. It needs that to stop it being intangible. We have touched it, is what they're telling us. We have been to the moon. So that's why they do it. They need to keep propagating that lie throughout all of the countries in order to unify us under a one world religion that is heliocentrism, if I could say the word. So yeah, I mean, let's move on from this to your shows that you've been doing, because you had a guest that I've been chasing for a while now, which is They Lie Ohio. Wonderful, wonderful guest. How did you get on? Obviously, I watched the show, but if you can tell for the audience sake, how did you get on?
Oh, well, okay. They Lie Ohio. Back in the day, I had, not back in the day, but, you know, a couple months back, maybe a year back, I created a video talking about how I thought the lunar wave was questionable, or I called it lunar wave is bullshit. I figured that what people were doing was filming a puddle, which was reflecting the moon, and that they were taking a bar or something and hitting the water and creating the effect of the lunar wave. But what we were really being shown on film was a puddle's reflection of the moon. That was what I theorized. I can't really prove that, but that's what I was saying. And then this guy, I think it was Chris Parker, came out with a video that really, really looked like what I had said. It looked like it was a wishy-washy pool, and that there was something being pushed to create a wave across the pool to give you the effect of this lunar wave, which there's all kinds of explanations out there. Ronnie Event Skeptic has actually come up with a pretty decent explanation of what he thinks the lunar wave was. But I mean, lunar wave is not something I really want to mess with. I don't really know anything about it. I certainly have not put in any kind of substantial man hours looking at the moon. I don't have any equipment. They Lie Ohio, however, does, and he was a big proponent of Crow 777. He was he kind of was the first person to rebut what I was saying. I tried to keep it civil with him. He's a very, very intelligent guy. He was fired up because I was calling out this thing that was very near and dear to him at the time. And I knew he had heard of me and he'd been watching me before, but just quietly, not really commenting much because I had such a small channel. When I came out with this, though, he was fired up. You know, he explains this in the last show that I had with him. He was fired up. I was attacking him. We stayed in a state of disagreement for a while, but then eventually I came around and I started realizing, hey, this guy's not really all that rude. He's actually a pretty cool guy. So I kind of apologized to him, and said, you know, maybe we should just respectfully disagree. That's what I said. And he really appreciated that. I started doing, and then months later, I started doing my live streams, and he was one of the first people in my live chats every time. And lo and behold, he was one of my biggest supporters, one of my biggest, I hate to use the word fan because that puts me on a level above him, and I'm definitely not on a level above him, you know. But he was one of my biggest supporters, and he showed a lot of love. So I had to return the love. And then I tried getting him on, and we played phone tag for quite a while. And eventually, one night I spontaneously was messaging him on Skype, or he sent me some spontaneous message on Skype. What's up? How you doing? What's going on? I said, let's go live tonight. He said, okay, let's do it. So I got him to come on live with me. And he is definitely one of the best guests I've ever had, probably ever will have. He's an amazing guy. I try to put that guy over a lot with people. I try to get people to subscribe to him. He's the real deal. And he's got a great face. He's got a great personality. He's got a great mind. He deserves every single sub that he can get. I can't praise De La Ohio enough. And he's not a flat earther.
Wouldn't you say? So there was a time that he did. I mean, I'm only doing this to give balance. So they lie. I love you. I think your channel's wonderful, and like and subscribe to De La Ohio. He's got some wonderful videos. But there was a time that he broke, if you know what I mean. He got so pissed off with the trolls, he had to address it, and it brought a smile to my face because I thought, you know, we're all human, and at some point, you know, you can only tolerate so much, and you could kind of hear that in his voice on those videos. But those aside, you know, his work is marvelous. Like you say, I have a similar sort of attitude when it comes to, I know you're not going to like me saying this because it was the guy that set you off on Globebusters, but Take Back Space, so Chris D. I love his channel because I love my telescope, and I put that in past tense because it's no longer here anymore. And it's not here because it's surplus to requirements, thanks to Chris D. And people like Take Back Space and De La Ohio, they're the people that are, you know, night after night looking at through their lens. You know, they're making the observations where people like me haven't got time to do it. It's as simple as that. And, you know, they're presenting the information to you in a nice palatable way. He did it recently, De La Ohio, with the star trails, and he's gone into Stellarium and shown anomalies. And when you have those moments, it was a bit like when Jerem presented the seagulls going into the mirage on Red Rhetoric's footage. You know, your heart skips a little bit of a beat when you see it, and you go, oh my God. And that was kind of the feeling I had when I watched those recent videos by De La Ohio. In fact, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a link to his video in the description of this video. So click on that when you've watched this video all the way through, of course, and subscribed and liked and commented. But yeah, click on that link in the description box, which I'll put in after the show, so you can see exactly what we're talking about. But do you know what I'm talking about in terms of your heart sort of skipping a beat when you see that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, my heart skipped a beat when I saw that footage that I think Aaron Dover or Ronnie from Event Skeptic was the first one to show it, where it looks like there's people in an airplane flying right next to the sun. I don't know, man. That scared the hell out of me, man, when I saw it.
And you know what I'm talking about? I'm glad you're smiling because it is exciting. I mean, being a flat earther, and I'm happy to put my hands in the air and go, yeah, I'm a flat earther. That's my title. I don't care if you ridicule it. That's what I am. It's obvious and observable fact that we live on a flat earth. Therefore, I am a flat earther. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody, I wouldn't go as far as to say everybody's a flat earther, because people literally, that, you know, your belief in terms of where you live is a very big part of your life. That's why we talked about Gem Panda being broken, you know. So, you know, you can't really label everybody a flat earther, even though they are living on a flat earth. But everybody around the campfire, Gem Panda included, you know, Charles, Flat Earth Math included, they're all flat earthers. They're all here. They can't ignore these facts that we present on a daily basis, and the obvious and observable nature of their world that they're living in daily. You know, they can't ignore this stuff, whether they want to or not. So, you know, they're all around the campfire. They're all here. They're all flat earthers, whether they want to be or not.
Sometimes I wonder at what point that they finally make this realization that, wait, I know that what I'm seeing is flat. And next time I go to debate these flat earthers in a YouTube comment or a YouTube chat, or maybe even in a hangout face to face, all I'm going to be doing is throwing mathematics, conjecture, and theoretical physics that cannot ever be proven by anyone empirically or with scientific method as my ammunition. I wonder what point they realize this, you know, and I wonder how it makes them feel. when they're out there fighting that fight on the wrong side.
Yeah, but we're smiling because we've got new eyes. You know, we're looking at stuff with a sort of childlike sense of wonder. And the stars, yeah, we can easily, or you do, say you can't use that as proof. You can't hold that as a decent proof. I mean, I did that on the debate. I was like, okay, let's throw it back in your court then. So what's your proof of the globe? Star trails, stuff spinning around above your head. Weak, next. You know,
Yeah.
what else you got? And suddenly they go, well, no, this is a debunking for a flat earth argument. All right, well, I'm not presenting that argument. I don't care. That's your weak, rubbish ass proof of the globe, then fine. But for me, it's just poor. You know, what else you got? And then very quickly you find that their path leads to NASA. That's where it goes, because they're the ones who are waving a flag going, hey, proof of the globe over here. Come and buy it on a mug.
Yeah. All the skeptics and critics are left with right now is sky arguments. That's all they have left. And I pretty much shut that down with my quote flat earth dogmatism. So they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're done. They're toast. Stick a fork in it. It's toast. It's done. Yeah.
What? Tell us a bit more about your show then. How's it going since you've been broadcasting live and having a few guests? We've spoken about They Lie, Ohio. Who else you had on, and how have you got on?
I've had Flat Still Earth, formerly known as Vlad the Globe Impaler. I've had The Scarecrow. I've had Lori Gale, and I've had Cathexis as guests. I think that's it. I'm pretty sure that's it. Those are the totality of all the people I've had.
Any noteworthy moments? Anything worth, you know, shouting out to the audience that they need to be checking out in terms of those discussions?
Well, I hate to bring attention to this, and I'm not going to take down the older live streams, but everything prior to like the January 26th episode, I was still being an asshole to my fellow flat earth proponents. I was still naming names, being a jerk. But on the January 26th episode of 2017, that's my big selling out episode. I declared it before I went on the air. I said, VB sells out, you know. And ever since then, that was right around the time that it was the show after I got hacked by Tim Osman. So I decided, okay, I got burned by messing with these guys. I'm gonna quote sell out, you know. And that's when I came around and I started realizing who I should be focusing my energy on is people that are like-minded, such as yourself, instead of focusing all my goodwill and energy towards contrarian jerks like Tim Osman and Jed Skeptic, who are just contrarian just for the sake of contrarianism. I don't even believe that those guys really believe themselves when they're being contrarian against the flat earth. I think that they know that the earth is flat. They can't unsee it. They're faking their skepticism. Gem Panda faking his skepticism. This woman, Kara, faking her skepticism. They all know the earth is flat, or some part of them deep inside believes that the earth probably is flat, and they're just being contrarians just to fit in and just to have a reason to exist on YouTube. I hate to harp on that idea, but I said it before. But other than that, though, you know, the January 26th episode on, it's a big turnaround. I've had a lot of fun doing it. I'm surprised I even do it. I shock myself when I go live and I'm actually able to ramble for 2-3 hours at a time, even without guests. You know, I do have the chat to help me, but sometimes I'll break off into a side rant and not even look at the chat for 30 minutes. And I've shocked myself. I don't know how it happens. I don't know what comes over me. I'm able to do it. I really didn't think I'd be able to do it. In private on Skype, you had said that you thought I was doing a pretty good job as a host, especially with having They Lie, Ohio and Cathexis on. And I really appreciate that, man. But I almost don't even believe you know. I don't know if I'm that great of a host. I know I stumble a lot. I know I like I'm doing right now. I'm just stumbling and rambling, and I lose track sometimes. Sometimes my sentences don't really make much sense grammatically and stuff like that. But I try. You know, I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Don't beat yourself up. I mean, like I say, I still tune in religiously, and I know that there's big names out there that also tune in. I mean, one of your shows, the first one where you essentially apologized, the one that you were just describing, the first commenter on it was Jaron, the first comment.
Yeah, and Patricia and yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we're watching. It's because it's good content. So, you know, you're saying I don't believe you, but proof is in the pudding. I mean, I'm hoping lots of people will tune into the show, and nobody who's watching this can think anything other than you seem like a really happy, nice guy. And prior to that date, you didn't. You seemed miserable. You don't seem so miserable now, and that's good. You know, I hope you can echo that in terms of your actual feelings. I don't know. I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, it is my real feelings. That's why you're seeing it on screen. I mean, if anything, I got to almost thank Tim Osmond for doing that. It's almost a blessing in disguise, you know. Maybe he ends up benefiting in the end though, because you know, I was a confusing character for him, because he and his little network of buddies were supporting me even though they didn't want to, and I was like the worst kind of flat earther, you know, and they were associating with me. And I think that maybe they did this to push me out and to push me more towards, you know, the bigger names and stuff like that, so that they could more easily attack me, you know, dehumanize me and put me in a box with yourself, Patricia, David Weiss, you name it down the list. I don't like to be put in boxes like that. I love and respect all those channels that I just mentioned. I think that's why Tim did that. I think that's why Jed did that. They were getting uncomfortable. The fact that they were having friendly feelings towards me, and they were having the cognitive dissonance of having to deal with the fact that they wanted to attack me, but weren't really allowed to, you know?
But when you describe these people, you're describing them as lying or not being able to unsee the truth. But is that akin to the character in The Matrix, that Cypher character? You know, he gets plugged back in and he just wants to take the blue pill. You know, he doesn't want to have been put into the Matrix. Do you think it's the same?
I guess the Cypher character is not even portrayed as having the equivalent level of emotional maturity that even these putzes seem to have. You know, they seem to be even more, you know, emotionally advanced than that Cypher character, you know, obviously because he's just a character in a movie. So it's hard to equate and just call them people that just want to get plugged back in because they're scared, you know, like an animal thing. These people are choosing to go out of their way to attempt to not only plug themselves back in, but pull others in with them. The Cypher character doesn't necessarily do that. He just selfishly goes back into the Matrix, I believe. These people are actually out here trying to collect people. And that's why Jed I believe Jed kind of tried to infiltrate the smaller Flat Earth network of channels, so that he could then do a big turn and hopefully bring a whole bunch of people back with him. And it didn't work. If anything, he just exposed himself and his friends, his little clique. They've been exposed. They've been shunned. You know, a lot of people are not taking their crap anymore. A lot of people are not listening to them anymore. They are going in subs, but the subs they're getting now are just other normies who just want to plug back in like Cypher.
Wait, I mean, detail it. There's going to be people watching this for certain that I've no idea. I mean, I know that there's people out there that only read comments, but there is going to be people out there that go, well, what do you mean? What are you dealing with? And you of all people will definitely be able to detail the kind of the childish behavior that you're trying to get across. I mean, I asked this because again on Globebusters tonight, they were talking about Gem Panda, and he's in our chat at the moment. I might display it while you talk about this, see what he's got to say. But yeah, they didn't actually detail what he specifically did. And for me, like you, I've only seen a good side of him, so I've never been trolled by him. But maybe if you can detail for our audience the kind of behaviours that you're talking about.
Well, okay, I don't know if a lot of people out there probably haven't seen this stuff go down because it's on such a small, you know, smaller number network of channels. Like Jed and myself, we're in this 500-600 range. You know, I'm in the 700 range now. I've gained about 50 new subs, I think, personally, thanks to you. But what happened was, well, okay. After when my show got hacked with when I had Flat Still Earth on there, my show got hacked by Tim. That was the big turning point, and then that's when I decided to come out with the next episode, which I called, you know, Validation Voice Sells Out. You know, the January 26th live stream. At that point, Jed decided that he was going to simulcast. He was going to simulcast that episode, and just basically just talk trash over the whole thing. Stuff he was saying was complete garbage, you know. And I mean, it's so hard to describe. There's been so much stuff that has happened, man. That's kind of tough to answer. But, you know, yeah, Tim Osmond.
I want the audience to hear the kind of childish crap that we have to put up with. That's kind of what I'm trying to get you to detail.
Oh, well, you know, Jed will be like doing personal attacks, you know, saying, oh, you're bald. Or, oh, he says I'm fat. He says I'm bald and fat. Well, you know, I'm balding really bad. I have a really horrible hairline. because, you know, I'm pushing 40 and I guess I got a lot of testosterone. I don't know what the deal is, but my hairline is horrible. So I choose to shave my head. I don't like the way it looks. I don't want to have the Hulk Hogan haircut. I don't want, you know, I don't want to have the George Jefferson. So I shave my head and it shines and I'm not ashamed of it. You know, it's actually a much easier way to live life. I mean, I have to use barely any shampoo every time I take a shower. You know, it's pretty great. It's pretty easy. Plus I live in Florida. It's very murky and hot and moist air down here. So having my head shaved it's kind of a lifesaver down here. And even in the wintertime, believe it or not, when my head shaved, you actually stay a little bit warmer for some reason. But, you know, they were saying personal things like that. And then you got Tim Osmond out there who takes computer graphics and photoshops faces of, he photoshops Patricia's face and my face and Bob Nodell's face and Eric Dubay and you name it down the list. He photoshops our faces into these other characters and stuff and tries to mock us. And Jaren, he does that with Jaren too. And it doesn't really prove anything. It's like, okay, so you made me look like mini me, you know, like mini VB, and put a rainbow colored dildo in my hand. So does that really prove that the earth is a sphere? No, it doesn't. So I don't even mind them doing it. All they're doing is, like you said, they're just adverts and they're bringing attention to my channel. And when Tim started doing that, probably gave me 20 new subs. All the people that hang around Tim, they're all subbed to me now. So
very handy. I mean, talking of promoting your channel, we might round it out there. I mean, if you can detail your channel name and maybe a plug for anything you've got coming up or any videos that you want to promote.
Well, I'm not really a full force YouTube kind of guy. You know, YouTube is I'm definitely, you know, addicted to it and obsessed with it, just like the rest of us. But I try to control it. I don't really monetize my videos. I feel like if I did that, I'd have a responsibility to manage it and to make it. It would become work at that point. It wouldn't be a hobby for me. I know others like yourself, you monetize, but I know this is not just like. I know that you probably don't look at this as a. You don't dread this like it's a job. You know. I
love making videos.
Yeah, exactly. You're not dreading it like it's a job. I feel like if I were to monetize my stuff, my personality, I would end up dreading it. I would end up feeling like I had a duty, you know, and that's just me. So I feel like I have the freedom of doing whatever I want by not monetizing. I don't have anybody to please or to appease or live up to anybody's standards. And so maybe once or twice a month, I'll do a live stream. Maybe I'll do some more. Maybe I'll do it more often coming up. And I like the idea of having guests. Sure, I can rant for 2 hours, 3 hours by myself, but I really want to start pulling in guests. I want to have Daylight Ohio on again. I want to have, you know, Flat Still Earth on again. I'd like to have you on. I'd like to have Patricia on. I'd like to have, there's a number of people I'd like to have on my show. And I'd like to start doing panels, you know, maybe maximum like 4 guests. Because then once you get past 4 or 5 guests on your panel, things start to get real tricky with the Hangouts. And there seems to be a lot of distortion and stuff like that. And if it wasn't like that, I'd gladly have 10 guests on. But unfortunately, the technology that we have now that the government gives us now, you know, we're only allowed to basically have 3 people on a live stream without it getting all distorted and choppy. But other than that, I'm just doing that. I've even struck a couple of my other good videos down. I had one about an Ohio professor who was speaking out against Zionism and stuff like that. I took that video down recently because I don't want to be seen as someone who is racist or hates Jewish people, because that's definitely not what it was. But I could see people out there seeing that video and then thinking, oh, he hates Jews and stuff. I don't want to put that message out there. I also had a video about the Pulse shooting hoax. It was a gay bar that was a couple miles from my house. And I saw the whole thing. I saw the whole media circus go down after the, you know, right after the fact. I didn't witness the actual thing in person, obviously, but you know, I live a few miles from it, so I was inundated around the time that hoax happened. And there's a lot of.
I mean, brilliant. I wasn't expecting this. Tell us more.
Well, no. I mean, I don't want to promote it now because I've taken the video down. But the video, it was called Pulse Hoax Payouts, and it was some information about the Pulse hoax, and then about how the I just took it from the Orlando Sentinel, you know, mainstream newspaper, how they were admitting that that they were giving out funding to all these victims of the alleged victims of the alleged shooting, and the controversy around that. And it was basically like, okay, so if you're one of these people that's at this club and you supposedly got shot, unfortunately these people were homosexual and they were getting a whole bunch of benefits. They were getting a whole bunch of their bills paid by our local government. And the idea of the video was like, basically, if this were a heterosexual nightclub, the victims would not be getting any funding. The victims would not be getting this recognition that they're getting. And Orlando is the home of Disney, and there's a very large homosexual population in Orlando. And I feel like the homosexual and transgender agenda is being pushed heavily through the city that I happen to live in. So, you know, there was a little bit of gay bashing and stuff in the video, because I'm a heterosexual guy. I've been living with my girlfriend for 6 years now. I'm surrounded by a lot of gay people, and it can really get to you after a while. They can be very aggressive and very volatile people. I don't want to look like I'm, you know, gay bashing or anything like that. But that's why I took the video down. I decided to take that down because there was some really poisonous language that I had used in it, and I wasn't really too proud of it. I mean, I was proud of the message I was getting out there, but I also don't want to be pigeonholed as someone who's just full of hatred. You know, I don't want to hate on what people want to say are the hot potatoes and stuff. I don't want to hate that. I don't want to hate anybody. I don't want to hate anybody anymore. You know, so I took it down. Unfortunately, that video had like I think 2,800 views or something. That's huge for my channel. It was one of my most successful videos, but I took it down anyways.
Well, like you say, if it's making you feel hate-filled, that's toxic to you. And often it's projection. So, you know, if you're feeling that way, you will hate on other people. And that's what that makes me smile. You know, when I hear people hating on me, I normally just replace the word you, meaning me, with them. In other words, I just see it as you're projecting whatever it is that's wrong with you straight back onto me. And fine, you know, I don't mind. It's water off a duck's back to me most of the time. I mean, I didn't think I'd get into this, but the only time it does really upset me is when it's somebody that's actually close to you, somebody that you consider a friend. Then it hurts. You know, random trolls, who cares? You know, most of the people you associate with, like we're associating with each other now, you know, it's water off a duck's back to me what they say. But when you physically interact with people, you know, on a personal level, and then they stab you in the back, that's when it hurts. You know, there's very few things that do hurt me because I've got pretty thick skin, but that's one of them. You know, I hope loads of people won't say, oh, brilliant, I'll befriend him and then stab him in the back. It's not that easy, fortunately, but it does happen. And those are the times that it really upsets me. I'm sure it's the same with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know about the projecting with these things, but the fact that the local policymakers in my town and the general atmosphere is they're really pushing the gay lifestyle here. And I felt like with the Pulse hoax shooting, they were almost advocating homosexuality, and they were almost inviting the homosexuals of the United States to kind of congregate in Orlando. It's kind of like the new San Francisco, and I'm uncomfortable with that. So I was really like shooting out some hatred against the system and the policymakers of, why are you guys promoting this? Why are you guys paying the bills of these alleged victims? You know, you're giving them gas money. You're putting them up in free high-rise apartments. You're giving them the good life just because they happen to be gay people. That, I thought that was horrible. You know, it was really an attack on the system. And
maybe that's the subject to round us out with then, because I mean, would you say that you were looking at conspiracies pre-Flat Earth? Was it something that, because I know that that's a subject that a lot of people like myself will have come to because of Flat Earth. Which way round was it for you?
No, Flat Earth is still pretty much the latest discovery in the conspiracy arena for me, other than something like, you know, interdimensional, you know, issues or things like that. But I pretty much heard of all the conspiracies leading up to Flat Earth. I even heard of geocentricity before I heard of Flat Earth. So.
Fair enough. So Flat Earth has been the end of the road in terms of, you know, all of the other conspiracies have led you to Flat Earth. Whereas for a lot of people who may watch this show, it's going to be the other way around. They'll come to Flat Earth through a suggestion on YouTube, and it will lead them into realizing that 9/11 and the moon landings are a hoax, which is quite bizarre.
Yeah, but it happens. I know. I never thought about that, but it does happen. A lot of people have not been in the trenches, you know, for all these years. I mean, Daylight Ohio, he's been doing this for 20, 30 years. He's been looking at this stuff. So, I mean, he is a great resource to tap into, his mind. Yeah, but
just so people feel a bit better about it, with DITRH, deep inside the rabbit hole, he found out exactly that way around. Earth is flat, then figured out the moon landings were a hoax. Weird, but that's just how it goes. You know, you don't know which order you're going to find things out in.
If there is any conspiracy that I've come across after, it would have to be maybe, I'm not sure when I say this, but just the idea being put forth that dinosaurs are not, you know, dinosaurs were a hoax. It's one of those small things you don't really think about, even though you've been thinking about conspiracies and how the moon landing is a hoax, school is a hoax, money is a hoax, the churches are a hoax, history is a hoax. You don't really think about little things like, oh, dinosaurs must obviously have been a hoax too. You know, if your logic is not finely tuned while you're on that journey.
It ties into the same lie, though. I mean, again, you know, possibly not for you newbie, but for the person that's been looking into this for a while, it's pretty obvious that it ties into the evolutionary story that is heliocentricity or heliocentrism. So yeah, it's one where it's a logical step. But like you, I was the same. You know, it was John Le Bon. No, it wasn't John Le Bon. It may have been someone else that initially introduced me to that idea of dinosaurs not being real.
Jungle Surfer.
I can't remember. There's so many different YouTubers that will expose this information, and you're just taking in. On the whole, I was taking in flat Earth information at the time, and then you just find yourself on these little sidetracks, going, "Wow, amazing!" But no, actually, it wasn't any of those YouTubers. It was my wife who brought me to the dinosaur hoax. You know, she's. I keep asking her the question. She stopped answering me now. If I ask her if she still thinks she's on a globe, she's kind of stopped answering. But it was her. She was like, she was the one that brought it to my attention. And then we went to the Natural History Museum, and she was like, "Oh no, there's no real dinosaurs in these museums." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, they're all fake." And I was like, "Really?" And then she showed me this article that showed that they were going to be removing the great big dinosaur that was in the hall at the Natural History Museum. So we thought, or she said, well, let's go and have a look at it before they remove it. They're going to replace it with the actual taxidermied blue whale that's in the back of the museum, because it's real. You know, that was the whole point of the change. They've got a real whale and a fake dinosaur, but it was something that they openly admitted. And you know, I think Stars Our Souls had also done something on it, where it had gone into a museum and asked them about their dinosaurs. I can't remember which one, and they'd essentially just admitted it there and then. And yeah, it's just plaster of Paris. It's just plastic. It's just a model. You know, none of it's real. The real bones are hidden. And this is something that Cathexis, we've mentioned him just as we were rounding out the show. We might as well give him another plug to Cathexis. So he's been doing a series called Science versus Scientism, and he's looking at some of these issues. You know, he's looking at the scientists that are looking at soft tissue found in fossils, you know, just double speak and nonsense, but how they explain it away, and they're ripping it to pieces. You know, it's almost comical to watch it, because they are literally tearing these institutions apart with their hangout. You know, it's amazing to think that these people, you said you've got 2,800 views or something on your most viewed video, and Cathexis is in a similar position. He's getting maybe 1,000 views at most on some of these videos. Watch these videos. You know, they're just amazing. For me, to watch this stuff be ripped apart before your very eyes is just breathtaking. It's a great time to be alive.
Yeah, these guys are ripping it apart from so many different interesting angles too. I really like that. But you know, as far as right up until excuse me, the fact that the system would be hiding these things in plain sight and just admitting these things in articles, you know, like how your wife mentioned the dinosaur thing to you, right up until flat Earth started snowballing, right up until that point, anytime before that, the system had dumbed down society so much that they could just tell people these things and put it out in public like that, and people just didn't even care or think about it for a second. They didn't even realize. But now that flat Earth is starting to snowball, and we got celebrities talking about it and stuff, I don't see the system doing these things anymore. I don't see them putting out an article just blatantly admitting, oh yeah, we've been faking this thing the whole time, but you know, in the name of science, we're going to put this blue whale in front now. They won't say that kind of stuff anymore. They're not going to do that kind of stuff anymore.
No, I think that ties back into Jupiter's Delight. Somebody somewhere wants to write the article. They know, you know, maybe they're on the in and they've figured it out, or they're at the top and they actually know the whys and wherefores. But either way, they figure it out, and then you know, you feel compelled to share this stuff, and you want to get it out. And if you are psychopathic, you'll want to get it out in a way that is a nod to other people who are in the know, but doesn't tell enough information for anybody to suspect that there's any fraud going on. You know, people would just read that and go, okay, it's not the real one. The real ones are locked up in a vault. I'll accept that and just move on with my life. Why would anything be amiss? And it's the same with most things. I think that the abrupt change we've had in Flat Earth is probably with the news or the media, you know, the psychopathic control grid that we're influenced by. For me, it's a simple action. Press off on the TV, no longer poisoned. Who do you say is the new Prime Minister? I didn't know that. You know, I'd rather I didn't. You know, it makes my life a lot better. But the radio, the newspapers, the billboards, the taxi sign adverts, everything, it's all poison. We just don't appreciate that it's information. Most people just say it's the news. And up until a point, most people just accepted what the news told them. This is what's happened out in Gaza. Okay, on with my life, going to the bar.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we shall round it out there. It's been a really, really pleasant conversation, Validation Boy. Thank you very much for being on.
I really appreciate you inviting me on here, man. I know you and me have had our troubles in the past, and I'll apologize to you now on camera for everybody. I'm sorry about that stuff. I have no ill will towards you at all anymore, and this has been my honor to be on here and to be invited to be on this larger platform. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It sounds weird saying on this larger platform. It makes me nervous. There's no one watching. This is just a private conversation. And also to all of you who have joined us live and in the chat, thank you very, very much indeed for being here. I've been Nathan Oakley. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. I will see you all in the next video.